Good morning on this Monday. Good morning. We have a few days left, Dog, this week till Friday in terms of July. Let's slow it down. Good morning, New Hampshire. Good morning, right up into Maine. We're adding FM signal strength coverage for you, 98.7 HD2 up into Maine, in addition to 98.1 FM, 1270 AM. WTSN, Seacoast, we got you covered. Lakes Region, 107.3 FM, one of our signals. We also have an additional 98.3 FM in the Lakes Region, 107.7 FM, and everywhere else worldwide. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google, play the pulse of NH. Our poll question up on X, and it is a big deal. And right now, President Trump is meeting with the Prime Minister of Great Britain, hailing this trade deal with the European Union as the biggest trade deal of them all. Some say it will put pressure on China as well, maybe even our neighboring Canada. But it's a big deal over the weekend. And we're going to have Doug Tengden with World Market Advisors with us in just a second, because this is a big one. But our poll question up on X, are you growing more optimistic about your own lot in this economy? Yes or no? Are you getting more optimistic about the economy? I do have to say, as I bring in Doug Tengden, worldmarketadvisors.com, on the economic side a little bit early. Doug, I was saying to some friends this morning before the show, and I mean this, politics aside, but I don't think you'll get a Democrat in federal office jumping up and down saying, this is a really good trade deal with the European Union. We've never really done this before. I don't remember, Doug, a president in the modern era, or I don't remember ever, that is actually cutting deals where the group, and this is European Union, this is a big deal. They're promising and pledging and committing to buying stuff from us, like $700 billion in energy, or Japan spending money buying stuff from us, not just improving the trade deal. Tell me why this isn't really good, Doug. Good morning.
Oh, I'm not going to. Good morning, Jack. Yeah, no, I'm not going to tell you that it's not good. The European Union imports over 300 billion of U.S. goods. Excuse me, we import from them 300 billion in goods. This is a very, very big deal. There are obviously a lot of individual countries, but as a bloc, they are our largest partner in terms of our imports. China, by contrast, we only import about 150 billion, about half. So this is
twice as much.
This is very big. Yeah.
Yeah, but you remember just a few months ago when Jamie Dimon, head of one of our biggest banks, others saying that we're going to go into a pretty bad recession because of Trump's trade stuff and starting these trade wars with everyone.
Yeah, and I think Jamie wasn't wrong in the sense that if it had gone in as it was outlined on April 2nd, on Liberation Day, that would have caused a financial crisis, the way it was originally rolled out. But Donald Trump is transactional. He listened to feedback and he said, no, actually, we do need to take some time to negotiate and to work things out. And he has a big stick. He used a big stick to threaten. And lo and behold, the Europeans are rejoicing over a 15% tariff. That was really something.
People don't do this, and I'm just going to say it on a historical, because I saw something over the weekend on the late actor George C. Scott when he played General Patton in the movie Patton, and there's a great scene in the movie Patton. I don't know if it was true with Patton, but he was fighting Rommel in the Desert Fox for the Nazis, a great field general, and he said, "Rommel, you son of a gun, I read your book," when he was out flanking Rommel. People want to understand Donald Trump. Why don't they read Art of a Deal? He's a deal maker.
Absolutely right. He's transactional. And that's, I think, what you were getting at the beginning of the show, Jack, is that this is the first truly transactional president we've had in a very, very long time, certainly in my memory. And that means that everything's on the table. And that means that he really is going to go after his vision of having a revitalized manufacturing economy in the United States. You'll get economists who will carp this and carp that. But, I look at this and I say that's $45 billion of revenue, which, on the one hand, it's a tax and that will affect things. And in Bloomberg, they're saying Donald Trump's tariffs are already affecting the global economy. Well, duh, of course, but it's a tax. But on the other hand, it does affect the U.S. Deficit, the federal deficit. And I heard that you have Scott Brown coming on. I'd love to ask him what he sees as the best way to attack the federal deficit, which is a real issue.
How did you hear that during the break?
I
you
kept
know
my
everything,
ears open, Jack.
You know everything.
I
Tell me,
my ears open, and what
Tell me who else is.
If I could ask one question, I would ask Senator Brown what he would do about the deficit.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know. You can tell us who else we have coming up real quickly before I know you have a 9:15 before we let you go. Federal Reserve also good timing going to meet, and President Trump and playing the art of the deal with Jerome Powell and the Fed criticizing their infrastructure project, putting pressure on him. Said, I think he'll do the right thing. In other words, I'm not going to fire him. Are they going to lower this interest rate?
Not this month, they're not, but they probably will signal that they will move in September. You could put that in the bank that they're going to signal that they're ready to move, and it's not as a result of pressure. It's as a result the fact that policy is restrictive, and there really isn't inflationary pressure. We'll also get a lot of news this week. We're going to get earnings from Microsoft, from Amazon, from Facebook, from Google. We're going to get employment on Friday. It's a big data week, Jack.
All right, thank you, Doug. Enjoy your meeting. Thank you, Doug Tandy, going a little bit earlier this morning on the economy. Big trade deal with the European Union. You heard Doug size this out, and I checked out these numbers. He is correct. $300 billion is kind of the trade between us and the European Union, and China's half that. This is a big deal. I don't care what you say. It is a big deal. And I think it's a good deal. The interesting thing about the President Trump, certainly in this term, is it's not business as usual. It just is not. Now, some people don't like that. Some people who like politics just the way it was, Washington just the way it was, they don't like business that's not, the usual. They like things, nicely tucked in, and certainly this is a shakeup. This is a shakeup big time. It's taking on, taking on the establishment and shaking things up. And then Trump had the audacity, the bold vision to say, I'm going to do it to the world economy. And everyone thought he was crazy. And now we're looking at trade deals like we've never seen. No one's ever done as the president of the United States to get these, like the Europe. You have to understand, this is not like Great Britain, or this is not Portugal or Spain. This is the European Union, a block of countries, our largest trading partner by far, twice as big as China. And they're going to commit to buy what $700 billion in energy, opens up our markets, and we get a better trade deal. We, as a country, get a better trade deal in and out. And, the 15% trade agreement is a better the deal than we were getting. And they were charging. And, it's like I said with Canada. Everyone was like, oh, Canada is such a nice neighboring country to our north. Why is he playing hardball with Canada on trade? It's because Canada's been eating our lunch the last 2 or 3 decades. The way they do business, the subsidies undercutting us. I had a steel fabricating manufacturer from the Seacoast talk about that. We've had manufacturers on the show saying that Canada undercut our ability to compete, and they've been doing it for years. Our wood, our paper. Why do you think we don't have more agricultural dairy farms dotting our landscape in New England? And you look at what they're charging us over the years, Canada, and then you look at the mills, the paper, the pulp, you don't make as much paper as we used to, but paper and wood, and how about wood and timber? So we'll see where it goes, but it's certainly the markets are reacting favorably. We will have some reaction to this. And also energy rates, electricity rates right here at home, as predicted. We talked about this last week, or I've been talking about it for a month. Unitil and Eversource electricity energy customers are going to see higher rates starting Friday, August 1st. And the utilities attribute that to the supply side and people using more energy. It is hot. We have another heat advisory out here today, so the AC will be on. But the Eversource folks, largest utility in New England, also, I don't know if it's been decided upon, they are currently asking the Public Utilities Commission in New Hampshire that represents, the ratepayers and Public Utilities Commission, the commissioners, to approve a 17% rate hike. Eversource, 17%. Does that seem bonkers to you? You go out to dinner and it's hard to pay, it's hard to afford it. Groceries are still high, everything, unaffordable housing, 17% rate hike. And and one of the big interveners is one of our great partners and sponsors, AARP of New Hampshire. They've intervened and trying to represent ratepayers. And, every little bit, people on fixed incomes, a lot of our listeners are trying to live on a, retired fixed income, or people with families. You have a budget, money in, money out. Everything's expensive. Healthcare has gone up, not down. Rent's going up. Unaffordable housing. Groceries are not cheap. It's expensive to do anything right now. And so our energy, keep an eye on that. All right. Will the Epstein matter quiet down? Not if you look at Congress. Also, we'll tell you about the Michigan the guy was yielding that knife and stabbing people, including an 80-year-old at Walmart, until a group of civilian shoppers did a stop the situation, perhaps save more lives. And one armed legal citizen was pretty effective at getting this madman to put the knife down and lay down on the ground till the police came. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of NH. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Heat Advisor. We'll tell you a little bit about that after this.
So what does a governor do after 4 Back on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, another heat advisory today and tomorrow, hot with some Canadian wildfire smoke and haze to throw in there. I don't think it has anything to do with the tariffs. I'm just kidding with Canada. But I want to just take a moment and elaborate, because this one took me a little bit by surprise when President Trump going over to Scotland and announcing this deal with the European Commission or the European Trade Union and their president. And this is a big one because the number of nations, it's a block of nations. We kind of had a potpourri deal before. I mean, there were specific mini micro agreements, but it was really nothing clear. And what's very clear on this one is not only is the European Union committing to buy a bunch of energy from the United States over the next several years, I think to the tune of about $700 billion. There are 20, let me just give you the facts that the national media won't give you. There are 27 nation bloc. They have the largest economic relationship in the world by many measures. And they trade nearly $2 trillion in goods and services per year, the European Trade Union. It's a big deal. Now, I know President Trump may throw out, support, I'm not saying embellish, but we'll say it's a big deal, like the big, beautiful bill. This is a big deal. And if you look at different parts of Europe, they're giving different reactions, but the president of the European Union, the bloc of nations, agreed to the deal. And now the EU is going to be paying a 15% tariff on our goods that we sell and trade to all those nations. You can call it a tax, but 15%. We weren't getting that before. So there is more money now that will come into the United States from this deal, plus the guarantee or the commitment to buy all that energy from us. And do you remember just a week or so ago, Japan, they were playing hardball with us as well. We were not going to get a deal, and then a deal was announced. And for the first time, we can sell like automobiles into Japan because we buy Toyota. You look at all the vehicles that may be headquartered, even if they're made, like Honda, Toyota, Nissan. A lot of these manufacturing plants are in the U.S., but the corporate holdings are not. So it's interesting to me. And what will we hear other than the markets like in this and the economy? Other than, are we going to hear the positives in this deal tonight on like World News Tonight with David Muir or CBS or NBC? Is 60 Minutes going to do kind of a piece for this weekend? 60 Minutes, the news magazine, they do a piece of the art of the deal. Trump goes to Scotland to, apparently open up one of his golf courses and take a few days off. And he cuts a deal with a new trade deal with the European Union for the next several years. The largest trading bloc of nations on earth, 27 nations. Trump signs a deal that's better for the U.S. Is that going to be the narrative? Is that going to be the narrative tonight or this? I don't think it will. Will Democrats running for federal office or national leaders who might want to run for president, are they going to say, hey, I may not like Donald Trump. I may not like much of what he does or what he says, or I may just not like him, but I got to give him credit. This is a pretty big deal. Nah, you won't hear that. Nope. But sometimes the numbers don't lie. And I just remember, because I have this thing called a memory, that wasn't many weeks ago that people were saying, and I got to be honest with you, when he started this, I was scratching my head too. I said, I can see China. I could see China because they've been eating our lunch too as consumers for a long time. I can see getting tough with China. But all these other countries, Canada, Mexico, and I knew about Canada because a lot of people don't know about how they've been having the upper hand on us for a long time. I got to tell you, people just don't even look around them sometimes. They don't even look around them. But you look at in terms of how Canada has affected our local economy in New England, not in a good way. Everyone thinks that, everyone, what's funny about people like Governor Mills in the state of Maine? They made more fuss. This is what's weird. And I mean this sincerely in some commentary. They made more fuss and made more noise about being upset about Canada's feelings that they might not visit Maine and New Hampshire, New England this summer as tourists to kind of hurt us by not coming here. Now, I haven't noticed much of a bump. I got to be honest with you. Yesterday afternoon, my smarter, pretty better half and I just, it was kind of rainy and showers, and we needed some really rain and showers. Kind of did one of those little drives into Kittery and York, southern Maine, over the border. And the traffic at around 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon coming back into New Hampshire on 95 was a parking lot as far as the eye could see. Didn't really count how many mass plates versus Quebec. But Governor Mills and others, they jumped up and down. Oh, my goodness. Canada's going to hurt us so badly because Donald Trump is being so mean to them on trade and tariff and trade wars that we're doomed. Doom and gloom. Doom and gloom. But I never heard in the last 4 years people like Governor Mills in Maine say Canada is hurting us in trade and we should right the scales and even the trade, because on agriculture, on wood and lumber, on energy, we are paying too much. They are getting a better deal. I never heard that. Never. And the same people this morning, and I don't mean to pick on Governor Mills, but it is darn fun sometimes. You look at what they're doing in the state of Maine fiscally. I won't hear any other New England governors, and maybe Governor Ayotte will comment on this, but if she's asked, but I won't hear a lot of people who are so fixated with hating Trump and blaming him for their gout and their back pain say, this is a really good deal. 27 nations comprise the European trading bloc. 27, all as one, and you get that deal. Wow, it's better for our manufacturers. It's better for us. We got a really good deal for once. And by the way, when we sell goods to those 27 European nations, they got to pay 15% tariff to us. Wow, good job. Not a bad job. Now they'll be whining about something else. 603-228-2080. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google. Play the Pulse of NH. Neil Vex, St. Anselm College Institute of Politics. See what he has to say about this and a lot more right after this.
107.7 properties from Greater Manchester to Greater Boston. Visit them online at outdoorpride.com. Now, back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
You know, the real test in the pudding is going to be when Canada agrees to a trade deal with us, because of the 27 nations the European Union did, 27, the largest trading bloc of nations on earth in terms of their buying power. If they agree to a deal to pay us 15% across the board for the first time for our goods, Canada's not far behind. It also, by the way, puts pressure on China. But once Canada does, I just have to wonder if Governor Mills and others are going to say, you know what, pretty good trade deal for the United States with Canada now, because they were eating our lunch for many, last several decades. I remember my late father-in-law fishing in Maine, Millinocket, Maine, of all places. They used to be home to a lot of mills and the wood and lumber and timber. Groveton, all these places in New Hampshire. Berlin, New Hampshire, used to employ a couple thousand people in the radius, and now you're lucky if you get a bartending job at a hotel 40 minutes from your house if you live in the North Country. It's just the truth of the matter. Some of these towns are ghost towns in Maine and New Hampshire now. They were once booming. How many farms do you see around New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine now doing agriculture? Not enough. Yeah, Canada's been eating our lunch. I had Neil Levesque, Institute of Politics, St. Anselm College. I had Holly Novoleski on a few weeks ago from Novel Ironworks. They do steel fabricating right on the seacoast of New Hampshire. The company's been around since 1956, I believe. But she said she loves what Trump is doing because Canada was undercutting our steel, their steel fabrication prices with cheaper steel for jobs like building a big building in Boston for decades. So it's a big deal with the European Trade Union, but I'm wondering if we're going to hear that in the national news tonight or from Democrats and critics. Are we going to hear this was a pretty big deal with 27 nations, Neil, across the board? I don't think we will we?
Well, if you're trying to claim that there's liberal bias in the national media, I'll take a pass on arguing either side on that one. I think most people can make up their own
but you know what, Neil? I just got to do this because if I have time. So if you have time, we're wide open now. And I might even ask you if you've gotten a tuna lately, because I heard some were finally active behind the shoals. Hey, Neil. So David Muir. Love the promo of him in the helicopter as he's flexing his biceps. But David Muir of ABC News, doing pretty well. He's their main anchor now, right? Now, being a former news director for many, many years at WMUR TV and head of news, I can tell you that the way newscasts like tonight, World News Tonight, are put together are very subjective. And the headline tonight, the lead story tonight, other than maybe another heat wave, the stabbing situation in Michigan, the main story tonight could be President Donald Trump, many thought was going to Scotland to open a new golf course. He just cut the biggest trade deal in American political history. 27 nations, largest trading bloc on earth, now will pay the United States 15% for exported goods. In other news tonight, I don't think that'll be the open on the news tonight.
Well, maybe not. It's a full news day anyway. Maybe they'll show him playing golf. He's not playing golf now. He's doing a live press conference with Starmer of the UK, talking about the deal. Yep. I think that there was a lot of talk about the fact that he, took a personal day on Saturday. This is a man that, whether you like him or not, he is a workaholic.
Yeah,
it's nonstop work all the time. I'm assuming that even when he was on the golf course, he was working. But it is a big deal. All the final details haven't all been worked out. There's a $750 billion energy commitment to the EU that they purchase this from the United States, the 15% EU tariff. But it is a big deal with all these countries and all this trade. I think the good thing is that it settles things out, and potentially, I think, things like stock market.
But I want to stay with this for a minute, because I know you're an academic and being down the middle, and I love that. Neil Levesque, Institute of Politics. So this does, whether or not you want to be a economic political thinker versus political, this does put pressure on China to do this deal with the European Union now, especially buying energy. European nations, people don't know this. People don't know this. Vladimir Putin Russian president, war in Ukraine. He's still been the energy gas station of the world. And if they're going to buy more for us, it's not. People won't point this out. It's also not good for Putin. But my point is, China puts pressure on them. So let's just assume we get a better deal with China than we've ever had. Let's assume Canada folds because that's easy. You got the European Union, you got Japan, you got kind of the main nations you wanted on better trade deals all by the end of the year. Is that mission accomplished or not?
I think it is to some degree. And I think that when we get towards the midterm elections, the economy is going to be how Trump, to some degree, is judged. And so far, we've heard that it's going to be terrible, that the world's going to end because of these tariffs that he's been pitching. Now, this has not been the case so far, and the economy is still in great shape. So I think that he is going to get judged in the end on this. It won't be things like Epstein and other, subjects which I think have distracted him recently. And the conventional wisdom is always that you go into the midterms and the party in power loses. But that's just conventional wisdom. It doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And as we saw from this Wall Street Journal poll over the weekend, the brand and the image of the Democratic Party is at a 35-year low.
Mm-hmm.
So although President Trump does not poll, say, in New Hampshire over 50%, and he's still not loved here in New Hampshire, nationally, the Democrats are in even much worse shape than even the polling numbers for Trump. So it's almost like the opposition party doesn't seem to be able to oppose Trump and create a good image based upon the fact that they're the opposition party. So although, again, history always says the party in power loses in midterm elections, that may not be the case this time.
Well, again, I think if you're in politics, you do need a message. And Trump had one in 2016 and he had one again. And it was, people may mock the Make America Great Again. Some people, they may not like the hat. They may not like the concept, but he has a message, and he has a message on immigration and the border. He has a message on trade, which I thought was very aggressive, but look at what he's doing. But he has a message. And your message, if you're an opponent of Trump, can't be, I don't like Trump. I can't stand him. That's not your message. Because number one, he's not going to be around forever. So if you're running in the midterms or you're running for president this next time around as a Democrat, I think you better go back to the drawing board and say, okay, I'm not even going to talk about Donald Trump. I'm going to talk about what I want to do, where I want to take this country, where I think we need to do better, where I think we can do this with healthcare and do it differently, where I think we can do this so that people who are making part or full, not full-time work, or seniors can live better. Here's my message. My name is so-and-so, and I'm running for office. Kamala Harris, people don't realize this, Neil, lost. We had Governor Chris Sununu as our podcast guest this past week with Brad Card on Contact Politics. Lost the election in that Fox interview with Brett Baier when he just asked, how are you going to govern and how are you going to be different than Joe Biden and the Biden administration? And she could not answer the question. How can you run for president without a message?
Well, I think that they have to figure that out. And you're right. The right now, their branding is all around things that are not necessarily popular to mainstream Americans. And the party gets wrapped up in that. The energy in the party is on the far left. We see that in, say, New York, the mayor's race. And when that is what the Democrats are focused on, they're not going to necessarily win some of these electoral college states where you really need to appeal to mainstream voters. And will there be a candidate that emerges that can do that? And in 1992, they had that. They had a candidate who had an appeal to mainstream voters who sort of one of us. And he was able to capture that feel and empathy of American voters. And, and until they do, and they drop some of the rhetoric, some of the fights they have that are appealing to the far left, they're not going to.
Well, people forget too. Good point with Bill Clinton. He started kind of his own more moderate Democrat group within the party, and the people felt up until then the Democrat Party had gone too far left, too liberal. And Bill Clinton came along. Now, he was helped by a recession, and people forget, take all the help you can get, by the way. He was helped by a guy named Ross Perot. Let's be honest, okay? But he was, in the end, he was more moderate. And right now in New Hampshire, we had Dick Sweat on the show the other day with former Senator of New Hampshire and Congressman John E. Sununu, older brother of Chris Sununu and Congressman Sweat. And I asked both of them in this environment, would they run again, for federal office? And Dick Sweat, he goes, I'd run again, Jack, but as a Democrat, a moderate, I couldn't win in New Hampshire today. I couldn't get through a primary. And I said, elaborate. And he said, I could not, as a moderate Democrat, I could not win a primary in one of the congressional districts in New Hampshire today. And I said, why? And he goes, because the party's just gone too far, progressive far. He goes, I think it's crazy liberal left. So I think the challenge for a Democrat in the future is going to be, what is the message? How can I be more moderate and sort of get the AOC Bernie Sanders side of the aisle where the more liberal energy is? How can I corral that? How can I lasso that?
But likewise, we had Nancy Mace here, Congresswoman from South Carolina, very socially conservative, talks a lot about the trans and bathroom issues and things like that, summing things up, putting it all in one basket. And she probably has a lot of appeal amongst the Republican voters today, but a Republican candidate like a John E. Sununu or a Judd Gregg might have a tougher time today winning a primary in an environment where Republican voters are also more in tune to the right. Who will replace Donald Trump next time as a presidential candidate? It's going to be very interesting. Pompeo was here a couple of weeks ago. He's not necessarily in the Trump camp with everything. Yeah. Can he ever win a primary for president? Well, I don't know.
There's another thing you and I have never discussed in a political matter mindset, the way you just put that. I've often said, Neil, we have time if you do for a moment. I know you have a meeting coming up. I've often said that people don't really understand Donald Trump politically, and I mean that from an academic, no offense, or media point of view. In other words, people forget. I'll never forget before 2016. I think you were the one, Neil, that picked up pre-candidate Donald Trump at the airport to bring him to an event at your college.
I did.
And you know how I remember that? He asked you two things. Do you remember what he asked you in the car? You told me later.
Is this the biggest politics and eggs you've ever had? Are there more people interested in this event?
Basically, and
he was basically appealing to regular voters.
No, but you told me he asked you a question. Tell me a little bit about the crowd and who's there, and tell me what I need to know. He was asking you questions, but he asked me the same day on my show, are people going to take me seriously if I run here for president? Do they think I'm serious eventually? And no one knew if he was going to run as a Democrat, an independent, or Republican, because he was so non-defined politically speaking. So when you say Republicans in the future have just like the Democrats, it's not so much that the Republicans are right, meaning over on the right side of the aisle and very conservative. Donald Trump hit something else among voters because he got more than Republican voters, and he took on the establishment. And people forget that. He took on Washington. He took on his own party. He railed against Jeb Bush. He railed against Hillary Clinton. He ran against the whole political establishment as a populist. And he won. Not once, but twice. So that's a feeling that's not going to go away after Donald Trump on either side, in my opinion.
Well, that's the challenge, right? Is anybody going to be Donald Trump and be able to appeal to that segment of voters? I don't think so. I think that there may be sort of people like Vance who obviously follow in the president's footsteps, but it's not the same. They have a loyalty to him, and it's not over 50%. Mm-hmm. It is a segment of the Republican primary voters, but they have a loyalty to him that they're not going to have to other people.
All right, Neil, I know you got some meetings. You got no tuna yet?
No, I hear it's been slow, and
it has.
I'm just looking out for great whites these days.
A lot of seals out there. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Jack.
Fun stuff. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Reminder in the first hour when I'm in the studio in the Capitol in Concord on Wednesdays, if you want to watch the show, you can. YouTube, the Pulse of an H. We make it real easy for you here, by the way. You have enough confusion and stress in your life, so we don't want to make you remember your password, your PIN, how to get into an account. It's everything here is the Pulse of an H. Our app, download the app. We break down the news for you by region, Lakes region, Seacoast, Manchester, Concord, North Country, the weather, the world news, the Pulse of an H, our on-demand stuff, our Pulse Podcast Network, the Pulse of an H, our poll question up on X. Everything's the Pulse of an H. And on YouTube, you can watch now at the Pulse of an H. Also, I do want to mention to you that I was reading a lot over the weekend or yesterday afternoon during the rain a little bit, just about where things go. We still have a $37.1 trillion debt. Now, I don't think we're going to default on that, but we better start thinking about that because it's going to be more than Medicaid and Medicare that are going to take a haircut. It's going to be Social Security, and there'll be different debates on this. But what the United States government will do is we'll print more money. You know what printing more money does to the dollar? It weakens the dollar. You make more dollars, but they go not as far. But if you look at silver and gold, but silver in particular, there's a lot of read this on your own. I'm not a brokerage advisor. I am not. But our friends at Alpine Gold, one of our great partners and sponsors, alpinegold.com. Right here, they just opened up their location on Manchester, 1800 Elm Street, headquartered out of Utah. They have the reserves, they have the gold, they have the silver. They're growing, and they're growing in states like New Hampshire, Florida. But here, alpinegold.com, silver has always been, it's always based on the value of the dollar, but lagging behind gold, a lot more affordable. So I don't know what the price of silver is right now an ounce, but I think it's about $38, but it's 30 something bucks. Gold, like 33, 3,400. I don't know right now, so don't hold me to it, but a lot of money. But silver, all this stuff we're making, electronics, computer, everything, silver's needed in manufacturing. And then experts tell me, you can read about this, the supply of silver is finally going to be less going into the fall. So Adam Van with Alpine Gold has said on the show, he thinks silver is going to go up in value. Buy some today. You can get a lot more silver for $300 or $400 or $500. Buy some today as a way to hedge all this, especially inflation of the value of the dollar. Go to Alpine Gold. But here's the reason why I'm telling you this. Just put in the word together as one. Speaking of the Pulse, one word, the Pulse. Put it together at checkout or when you go in and you want to buy, and they can ship it to you. Shipping is free. You get a lot of services and benefits by being a listener. Just put the Pulse as one word at checkout, the Pulse. No matter what you're doing, joining or buying, you want to buy some silver, buy some gold, the Pulse, one word, the Pulse, Alpine Gold, the Pulse, and it's gonna pay off in terms of I think a good deal, a good value. All right, we'll take a quick break. We're going to tell you about some of the other news talk. Heat advisory is back with some Canadian haze thrown in. Back in a moment.
This is the Pulse. Granite State's #1 streaming news talk station. This is the Pulse of New Hampshire. Good morning, New Hampshire, live from the Outdoor Pride Studios. Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
J-Dog, I've been remiss. I hope you had a good weekend. A new class in the Hall of Fame in Major League Baseball.
No,
Big
Baseball
Five?
Hall of Fame. That's not the same.
Oh, come on, please.
National Baseball Hall of Fame. You
I
don't
think
have
it's
to
the
put-
same. I
It's
think
not
people
the
know what
same.
I'm talking about.
So it's like the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Doesn't have anything
If
to do
I
with the
say
NFL.
European bloc versus the European Union, you know what I'm talking about.
So Baseball Hall of Fame adds 5 people, 3 that are still with us, with Ichiro, CC Sabathia, and Billy Wagner, posthumously Dave Parker and Dick Allen. And also you had Tom Boswell of the Washington Post. He got in as a writer. And Tom Hamilton, the voice of the Cleveland Guardians, he got in as the Ford C. Frick wing of the Baseball Hall of Fame for the broadcasters. So whole new class of Hall of Famers in 2025. Got to be interesting to see who gets into the class of 2026, because if you look at the balloting for next year, not too promising. So it may have to lean on Veterans Committee and or someone that's on the second or last time on the ballot. So we'll see if there's going to be anybody in 2026 getting into the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. But 2025, and as I said, Billy Wagner, Ichiro, and CC Sabathia, and no controversies, nothing. It was all love. Dave Parker's son did a poem for him because Dave Parker had passed away just before he was set for induction day. He passed away in June, and the Cobra gets into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Dick Allen had died a while back, but good to see. I wish that Dave Parker was alive to see being inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. So.
Good stuff. Red Sox continue to be on a roll despite that. I guess the strike at Fenway. I don't know where that's at.
Concessions.
The concessions
Which
and
is
the
going
workers.
Going to replace. It's going to happen though. I don't want it to happen, but it's going to happen. AI / robots are going to be filling up your.
No, they're not going to be filling up everything over there. There's still, you got to go through the stands. You want your cold beer here?
20 years from now, that's not going to be the case, Jack.
Robots in the stands.
Robots there's already robots.
By the way, you mentioned AI. It's interesting. I want to come back to this, J-Dog, because you look at energy rates going up. It's not just hot weather, folks. Every time you go on your phone now, J-Dog, if you put in tell me the last time 5 players like this with X numbers passed away, entered the Hall of Fame or whatever. You know what, J-Dog? That's AI. It's eating up these data centers. They're going to chew up a lot of energy.
Yeah.
All right. Coming up, I'll tell you more about electricity rates. Also, Scott Brown, one of the candidates running in the U.S. Senate race, is a Republican. His thoughts on that trade deal and more. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. We're back enough you.